So, anybody heard of Prometheus before? Okay. I hate to say it now because I do want everybody to hear it. Now, people are still coming in, so I will do something else in the meantime. I'll say the most important thing I need to say today, and that is please turn these things off, okay? AUB is getting a very good reputation abroad. They look upon us as really a good university. And I get these course equivalence requests from students, and when it comes, they come with syllabi. And I've noticed that on all the good universities, on the syllabi, they say, no mobiles, no laptops, nothing, no IT in class, or it will be noted. So lectures even worse, because you're not just annoying yourself, but you're annoying people around you, because I'm sure they're going to get more interested in whatever it is you're watching than the lecture. So please do put them away. Also, just another note, you know, we do like to try to invite professors from outside the program to come and give lectures. And one comment they always make is that it's very annoying and even insulting when we've come and prepared a lecture and giving it, and I look out there, says the lecturer, and they're either speaking with each other or they're playing with their mobiles, or, you know, why do you want me to give a lecture? Now, this gives a very bad reputation to the whole university, and I'm sure you want your degrees to mean something, and you know, the reputations are odious, but they're done. Okay, now that everyone is here, I can start with the lecture proper. Prometheus is the background to my lecture. Prometheus was this legendary figure in the Greek mythology who was the benefactor of mankind. And much of my lecture today is going to be around that theme, that tragedy really, and certainly the play we're doing here today, focuses on the human being's limitations, but also the human being's powers. And when people usually think of tragedy or tragic, they usually think of something negative. Well, it's negative in one sense, and I'll be speaking about that today. But why tragedy has always attracted people into opera and all sorts of forms of, you know, and writing their own tragedies in their own period, like the Romans, and then then in the modern period you have tragedies, and then you get into tragic existentialism, because existentialism can be either believers or atheists. In its atheist form, in existentialism, much of what they do in the modern and current period is really take sort of some of these heroes from the past, like Prometheus and Sisyphus, and out of them weave their own modern tragedy plays, which basically still do the same thing, or still say the same thing about our humanity. So we're in the humanities, and we're trying to, our basic question always is, what's this text telling me about myself, about my society, about, you know, how I understand life, the meaning of life, finally. Otherwise, we should take courses in specific departments if you're getting to be too specialized on any one of these books. So what I would like to try to do today is to try to help you understand one way, because you can, you know, there are all sorts of ways of dealing with this material. I happen to have spent a lot of time in this, so I'm aware of all the many different theories about tragedy, and I only came to this one really in teaching CVSP and in doing 2 productions of Oedipus, one up at the LAU in their Gulbenkian Theater, which is a marvelous theater. This is an auditorium, it's a horrible place to do plays. But so we did one here, we did an Oedipus here, but in both times, when you spend that much time with a play and going through each word of each character and bringing them to life, you get, you know, your own perspective on what tragedy is all about. And then you find out that, as usual, you're not inventing you're just inventing the wheel. I start to find other sources who also looked at tragedy in this way. Unlike how Aristotle focuses only on the formal aspects, not the heart of it, the philosophy of the tragic. Hegel gives you his own dialectical approach to all this. But you know, trying as much as I can to help you understand the Athenian Greek world that we're into now with Thucydides and Sophocles and Socrates, in every field, in other words, at this time in Athens, we'll talk about the time in a minute, but people were presenting items that were presenting a meaning, giving a meaning to life. So when you read the Epic of Gilgamesh, this shouldn't be new to you, what you were reading really was how a whole collection of cultures and peoples for many centuries had thought about what life was all about. And then the one text we have finally, and of course you were told that the one you have is just a student-friendly one, it's not an expert's one, but that's the story we're dealing with. We're learning to read a particular text and interpret it. But basically what we look for in these texts always is, what were they saying about the meaning of my life? You know, how should I look at the divine, you know, the gods, or whatever is the ultimate factor in the universe? How should I look at my community? How should I rule my community if I'm a Gilgamesh? How can I be part of the community? What's justice? And finally, of course, and most importantly, is how do I look upon myself? Who am I as a human being? How can I be a somebody or a nobody? Hopefully you've been introduced to these terms a little bit with Odysseus. I don't know whether you took that because we didn't have a second lecture, but Odysseus wants to be a somebody. And this is why he gives away his name, because the Cyclops only thought his name was nobody. And, you know, when his friends came, when he was screaming in pain, all that, you know, who's harming you? He says, oh, nobody is harming me. So the Cyclops will say, oh, fine, have a nice day, you know, see you later. So the nobody trick was, you know, the use of the mind in Odysseus. But then why on earth does he give away his name when he's leaving? Only because he wants to be a somebody, not a nobody. You see, if he goes away as a nobody, what does he tell the Cyclops? If somebody asks you who did this, remember, tell them it is Odysseus, son of Laertes. His WhatsApp, his mobile, his all the coordinates. He lives on this corner. You'll find him in this bar. You know, giving him all the details. Why? Because he wants to make sure that he has a name and that he's a somebody. Without a name, you cannot be a somebody. But the tragic element in Odysseus, if you missed it, was that if he didn't do that, and he was intelligent enough to know that he was going to have to pay for this in one way or another, because he knew this was the son of one of the main gods, Poseidon. Yet he did it anyway, you see. And this is the tragic hero. The one who wants to be a hero, and then a hero simply is how can you be, you know, the fullest human you possible in your own society at your time. There's somebody who really tries to do the best thing and to seek their own identity. These are the two commandments of Apollo, which we'll talk about more today. And Apollo comes to represent how should I as a human live my life in order to be a somebody, in order to be, to have self-respect, to have the community of humans acknowledge me, and that therefore I will have a name. Because they all believed that at death, everybody was going to Hades. You remember what happens to everybody in Gilgamesh? They all go to this horrible place that Enkidu's dream is all about. You know, the good and the bad, the great and that. Everybody goes there. So in the Gilgamesh, one of the answers to that is Siduri. Well, don't look for anything, that you really think is very serious, the answer to death. And look, Utnapishtim has had it there. This is a very scientific and rational approach that Gilgamesh was using. I hope you saw that. He was going according to the information and the experience, the life experience that he'd have at every stage. When he got more life experience with Enkidu, he starts to be more empathetic, start to understand what a human is. First time he has a friend, an equal. And then he starts to, with the death of Enkidu, he starts to see what death is really like. Death was just what he sent all the others out to go to war when he wanted to get some glory or spoils or something. Now he understands what death means in an existential way, a human way. Existential means simply something that's both rational and human and experiential. The three things together when you talk about existential. It doesn't mean irrational. There are rational thinkers and there are existential thinkers. An existential thinker tells you that at every point when you're looking at your own philosophy of life, use your reason to the utmost, of course. But finally, a philosophy of life that's going to give you, meaningful life should be speaking to your own experience, and you can test it both, analytically, but you can also test it in your own life. And this was, I think, the kind of heroes we're getting at the beginning of this course that influence existential thinking all through the centuries. That this is what I want to know about life, something that, that I can discover, something I know what I can do with my own life. So Gilgamesh was a tragic hero because he was in his culture doing what he thought was best, living according to the data he had. As he got more information, he transformed as a human, he became more empathetic, etc. But he was ready to go for truth. Utnapishtim has survived. There is a fact there. I'm going to find out how he did it. I'm not just going to accept, what people tell me. Oh, Gilgamesh, don't seek eternal life. It was just given for the gods. See, this is the scientific aspect of the human being that's always been there with every human. It just gets more and more developed as we have more instruments, etc., like that. But this is a hero for all times, in other words, because what he's expressing is the readiness to grow with experience and recognizing his own self-limitation as he goes on, but not accepting sort of just whatever is the latest fashion or whatever is PR, politically correct, or whatever, will get you promoted or get you wealthy or something. He wants, he suffered. He spent, the second part of Gilgamesh was a very tragic aspect of what you have to do in order to get to truth. He comes to truth. The truth, of course, is not happy. But this is the heart of tragedy, whether it's in Gilgamesh or whether it's in Oedipus today when we see this, or whether you were in Thucydides, if you could notice that the great Athens is coming to a tragic end. So I'm going to try to let you see this tragic note in the Athenian Greek, not just in literature, but also in the history, because you all were very, excited about the fact that this is something, you can understand better, and he looks for eyewitness facts. That's wonderful, that's great. But the vision there, the meaning of life is finally tragic. Human nature limits you, Habibi. Whoever you think you are, however well you use your mind, human nature always ready to offend. As soon as it gets an opportunity, there isn't a well-structured polis. It shows itself in its true colors: envy, greed, pleonexia. And so life is this struggle between the better part of your reason, and that's what allows you to go forwards in the way he was doing in history. But as a human, you don't expect you're living in a world other than the same tragic world that all the tragic thinkers were thinking of. Look at what happened to the great Athens. It had been the source of much of knowledge and enlightenment to everybody. As soon as it lost its bearing, as soon as it lost reason governing it, all right, little by little, the lust for power took over. The tragic element is always inevitable, a deterministic element, but we're not determined fully. There is a fate, as we will see with Oedipus. His destiny, he's going to kill his father and marry his mother, no matter what he tries to do. But by trying to do something, that's his role, that's his freedom, he saves the city of Thebes, which we discover he is the king of when we read the play. He saves them twice. He has saved the polis. He has saved the human community, because the polis had become by now, as you can see on the fly sheet, the first page, by the way, the polis has become an ideal, a concept. Not just any city or any city-state, just a geographical, sociological, geographical place. No, a city meant, finally, the polis meant, finally, the best that you can be as a human being is to be an integral part of a community that's all striving to do what Apollo has taught them they should do. Know thyself, balance is best. Both of them have an indication of seek truth, seek excellence, do your best, all right? If we can get ourselves as humans to be doing this, and Plato later on will tell you if we can get the education system to help people to become like this is our only hope. But as you will see in Plato, like in Thucydides, they maintain a tragic note. Plato finally gives up his hope of doing all this the way he presents it to you in the Republic, of just change the education system, change the institutions. We can change the polis. He tries to apply it in the Greek world, and by the end of his life, he writes the laws, and has come to the conclusion that we can only have that improvement of society by using reason, of course, that was his main thing, and trying to see what is the best way that reason can give us to structure a polis. That's the meaning of politeia, the title of the play of the book you're going to read with Plato, The Republic. Don't look for a dictionary thing there. See how the man is using it. What's the best possible structure? We can get almost mathematical, architectural structure we can find by the use of reason, not just tradition or what we're doing or whatever thing, but by use of reason. However, Plato himself comes to a conclusion at the end of his life that it's just too much. It's like what Thucydides was saying. There's something in us. So these boys were not moralists. They didn't really generally believe that humans can sin in the monotheistic sense. Know God and have all the good things of God and have a good mind and have freedom and betray God or betray a human being if you want to take God out of the picture. The human can do that. The human can sin consciously. All right? For the Greek and the Romans, this notion of, what humans can do was not there. It was always a question of either there's something in the cosmos that limits us. So we saw with the Odyssey that nothing he could do is going to ever make him have a happy end. Why did we find this out? Did you all remember Book 11 in the Odyssey when he goes down and meets Achilles? Achilles represents the best a human being can achieve in this culture. A hero who chose to die young but not be a nobody. All right, rather than live long and be live long and be a nobody, die young but be a somebody. He chooses the other one. When we meet him in the underworld, I want to point you out to these things so you don't take them as just separate texts. Homer there is challenging the reader to think about the code, the general code for that population. Be a hero. Do your best. It was a very elitist view, by the way, of full humanity. It's only these great heroes. All right, the ordinary man is not very important in Homer. Okay, but that's what heroism is all about. Okay, here we have Achilles, the one who goes for this code as fully as possible, and now he's saying, "I wish I was a nobody of a nobody of a nobody, but still alive." So is Homer now changing his mind about the heroic code that he himself was the one who presented in the Iliad and now in the Odyssey? No, it's challenging you to be a critical thinker in his day and in our day. And if you haven't thought about that, do think about that. Odysseus comes out, and he now has a more conscious awareness of the price he's going to be paying to be a somebody. If Achilles is there and he's the greatest of humans, what can I expect for myself or anybody else? You see, the message. So, does he change? No, he goes on living exactly the same somebody life all the way through. But now he's a true, conscious hero, ready to pay the price, the tragic price to be a hero in a tragic world. And what's a tragic world, therefore? Just very simply, before I go into all the details, I want you to get the heart of this before we start going into the details. The heart of it is that life in this tragic philosophy of life, because it's a philosophy of life, it can be presented in a very rational way. But the vision of what life is all about is tragic, meaning life, don't expect reward for your seeking to do your best, and you're seeking to be excellent, and you're seeking to be a somebody. It has its own reward, and that's all you will ever get. Intrinsic reward is the most important thing in life. You can get all the extrinsic rewards. You got money and powerful and all of this. You'll just be a Gilgamesh at the beginning of the Gilgamesh story. He becomes more human as he starts to understand better what life is all about and empathize with other humans through Enkidu, and then go on a search and then to understand death. This is the stuff of a tragic hero already, even though this epic was not about tragedy, and the epic of Homer includes both tragedy and rationalism in it, because Odysseus represents the search for truth, the philosopher and the scientist and scientific investigation. He wants to go everywhere and risk his life to get data and to get more information, more knowledge. What do the Gilgamesh people say about Gilgamesh? Don't be sad, you brought so much knowledge back to us. This is the great man who, imagine, had he not taken this trip, had he just taken the advice of Siduri and the people there, what would have happened? They would never have gotten all the wonderful knowledge and wisdom and light that he got by going through all these travels and bringing it back to them and coming back and being a much more mature leader. It's an intrinsic reward, all right? The only extrinsic reward he gets is the immortality of name, because his name, lives on to our day. Gilgamesh as a name. But he does not get what he wants. He doesn't get any serious answer to why do you have to die? Why do we have to die? Why did Utnapishtim get, we did this play here, Epic of Gilgamesh, and the guy who played Utnapishtim was a wonderful actor, but he was this big fellow, so we could easily have him play sort of that interpretation of Utnapishtim. A lazy fat slob who was sitting there eating. When Gilgamesh meets him, he says, here I've been seeking to try to see, what's your secret? How did you get immortal? And here you are, this fat slob was just doing nothing. Tell me why. How come you survived? And he tells us why. He was a good Lebanese. He had wasta, Eya. All right, this is the divine. They just they do whatever they want to do at any moment, and they all agreed. Notice this is something Homer doesn't do anymore. The gods agreed in council about something. And then Ea immediately betrays. He sends out a mobile message to his party about what happened in the council. And then he breaks the trust by and then when responsibility comes along, nobody claims it. Ishtar, oh, it's all Enlil's fault. Habibti, you were part of the council in the first place. And you are going to promise us something for the future. You look at how Ishtar has been presented. Gilgamesh tries to reason with her. Look, I'll do whatever you want, but I don't want to be your husband because, you have a certain history, and I've looked you up on the web, and, you've done this, and this. His reason is working all the time in great literature. Don't think of it as, it's in the past, or, this is literature. Or they talk about gods. You have to learn to understand symbolism. These people were presenting truth in the best way they had, and that was the imaginative power of their minds. Okay? And then the philosophers and the historians also, add the other aspect. But the two are needed. The two are very much needed. You're using them all the time in your life. You're using both powers of your mind all the time. But now this part is going, the muscle is weakening, and you can't see symbolism. You can't respond to symbols. You can only respond to something that's written down in a form you can read on in a nice piece of paper. So Gilgamesh was a tragic hero because he was ready to seek the truth and ready to do everything he could do, possibly given the data he had at his time, always seeking more. But he is not rewarded. He's only rewarded, the plant is only the last sort of the straw that broke the camel's back, if you know that expression, Oh, he's got now the plant. But, he wants to take it back to the people who need it more quickly. Already that includes in itself something very, very important about what's happened to Gilgamesh. From just the man who has all the power and is seeking, and knows that the only fame he'll ever have is by heroism and all this. The heroic code you're being challenged to think about it. All right, but they don't change. They go on being that way. But if you want to be a hero in a tragic world, you have to be realistic, and that's what tragedy is all about. It's try to arm you to be a realistic human being from that view, from their point of view, from the point of view of tragic writers all through. Basically, we are living in a world that is not made for us. No promises made, no promises broken. Whoever promised you that you're going to be, that the world and the gods and the cosmos are going to promise you? If you believe that, you don't belong to this world. You belong to a rationalistic kind of philosophy of life, or a monotheistic, other ones. But tragic is something that has lasted through the whole centuries and been developed and made very, very important, and still living. And so I want you to make sure that you don't pass through these, murur al-kiram, as we say in Russian. We don't just pass through these things like, looking at each one separately. But to see, this is a major part of 201, the tragic and the rationalistic, understood in different seen in different cultures how humans use their mind. So you're using your mind in Gilgamesh, see? But you need to see it. You need to decode the things, how the mind is being used. That's the heart of the focus on the mind through this particular course. When you get to Odysseus, he's now clearly the hero of the mind, so you don't have to get too much interpretation to realize that he's being presented as the model for the use of the human mind, okay? But is he going to be rewarded? You see, if he's going to be rewarded, it's a rationalistic world. If he's going to be rewarded, it could be a monotheistic world or some other. But a tragic world is precisely what happens to Odysseus. At the end of the story, Homer cannot end it logically. He's been extremely logical in the way he's used the gods. Athene with Odysseus, Aphrodite with Helen. Homer gave definition to the gods, all right, by their own. Let me see if I can just use some of this. I'm sorry, but there's just so much to be done here that I know this is going to be not that easy to follow. But I hope you get enough, and the fly sheet is quite expansive. This is where we are in the golden age of Pericles in Athens, this 100-year period that produced so much that continues to influence the whole global world, and certainly the European and Islamic worlds have been extremely influenced by the whole Greek world in this period particularly. Pericles came to represent as a symbol. You read about him in Thucydides, but he becomes a symbol of kind of the political power that has wisdom. So you're combining wisdom and political power. If you only have wisdom, you don't know how to rule in the world of politics. If you only know how to rule in the world of politics, which Pericles certainly did when he needed to, he was very realistic when he needed to be, but he had wisdom. And so when you read the funeral oration, this is Thucydides presenting to you the symbol of Pericles as rational, democratic thinking. All right? These are the ideals we live for. That's what makes us strong, etc., etc., etc. All right? And then what happens? As soon as he dies, the people who come after him no longer have power and wisdom. They have just power, so they go just for the lust for power overcomes them, and Athens is destroyed. So this is the tragedy of Athens, Thucydides' work. If you look at it sort of in the meaning of life, we look at the technique, because it's extremely important when you start to do history the way he's doing it, eyewitnesses, arguments, all that's very, very important. But don't drop out the other side of your mind when you're going through the world. You're still the other aspect of your humanity, which is probably even closer to you, what you really need to know, knowledge that you get from existential knowledge, from life, from testing theories in your own life, picking up knowledge every day in the way you're relating with other people. You don't have to codify it to make it knowledge. This is a human knowledge, existential knowledge. It's not against rationalistic knowledge and that kind of technology. So here in this golden age of Pericles, you had history through Thucydides, you had philosophy coming through Socrates and Plato, and you had Sophocles, which you're being introduced to in this particular week. Okay? Aeschylus and Euripides are the other two great. These are names on the top of your fly sheet, by the way. Prometheus, you see, is the model for all of the tragic heroes, or for Oedipus. Basically now what I want to try to tell you is that just as Homer could not end his poem at the end, so there's a deus ex machina, we call it in theater. You want to give your audience a satisfying ending, so it has to come to an end. But the logic of the story is announced by Homer, by Odyssey. We now have to prepare ourselves for a new epic, okay? Because in this vision of life that Homer had before Athens, now they've developed it, the only way you can get justice is nemesis. Okay, somebody does something wrong, you have to punish him. But in punishing him, you inevitably do something wrong to somebody else, so that something wrong has to be punished. And so you get this vicious cycle of feudal blood revenge as your system of justice. That's why he has to end it by bringing in Athene and Zeus. And it's still logical, because they represent justice and wisdom. All right, but the story, the truth of the mechanism of the story and the consistency of the story is broken. He needs to have a happy ending. If you ever see any, it's beyond your age now probably, but the Hollywood ending movies, cowboy and Indian stories, where the Indians are about to destroy the cowboys, but then the cavalry comes from somewhere, dun, 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 they come at the last minute, and you get a happy ending, and you take Shakespeare's King Lear, as they did with neoclassicism in England, and they give it a happy ending with King Lear meets Cordelia, and this is one of the great tragedies of history. So, the rationalistic mind doesn't like to think of the possibility even of the world really being tragic. But, there are a lot of people who think the world is tragic, and that's what I have to try to help you to understand how Oedipus, Oedipus is challenging Sophocles. These are the other, back to Sophocles. Sophocles is the dramatist who was a general in the army of Pericles. He was a great thinker and presenting his thoughts in tragedy, in tragic poetry, all right? And he was also a priest of the god Apollo. Now, Apollo is a main god in this particular story, right, as a symbol. A symbol for what the gods represent. So what we will discover in there is that when Oedipus hears that he has to kill his father and marry his mother, first thing he does is react, using his mind, like Gilgamesh did in that story. So in each context, how does a human respond to something that seems irrational, that seems immoral, that seems horrible? You just sit back and say, well, que sera, sera, kullu maktub, it's all written by God for you. And Habibi, you're making, you're just making so superficial qada qadar, if that's how you understand that in monotheism, or that, there's some kind of a simple formula where you're all determined, where everybody is determined by something. So in Homer's world, the gods are limited. Only the cosmos is the unlimited. All right? The limited, Zeus is limited, Poseidon is limited, Hades is limited, Athene is limited. She can't help him on the sea because the sea represents Poseidon. All right? And Zeus cannot get Poseidon to do something that Poseidon doesn't want to do because he's equal. There's no one God. So don't take Zeus as the one God that later on in philosophy, in some philosophies, they take him as a symbol of, the monism of the greatest power, truth or whatever. So basically, Sophocles then is this citizen of Athens. And the citizen of Athens believes they are living primarily in this kind of a conceptual world that I have there on your fly sheet and under the conceptual framework. They believe that the divine is the cosmos. It was worshipped as a god itself, the cosmos. And they believe that everything you can ever think about or experience is within this cosmos. This is the historians, the golden age of Pericles, Prometheus, Aeschylus, and Euripides, the other great tragedians. These are the ones who gave us comedy. Aristophanes making fun of Socrates there by giving him a 4 backside salute, but presenting him as up in the air somewhere, which certainly wasn't Socrates. He was trying to bring philosophy down to life, as you'll see. But this was, satire. So this period presented great things that then continue to flourish in every field that we can think of today. Athens and democracy in the Acropolis, the Parthenon, the temple to Athena. Apollo and Dionysius become 2 major gods, and as things develop. Apollo representing generally reason and light and healing and things like that, and Dionysius representing excitement and vitality and all of this, but specifically speaking, in the world before these things become more and more symbolic, what is happening now in Athens when all the free citizens come out to watch this play? So in watching the play, they are participating in the play, and so that's something you need to pick up at least about why theater is the most interactive of the arts, because you can make or break a performance by being a lousy audience, all right? If they're trying to present tragedy and you're giggling or laughing at the wrong moments, it affects the actors. And if they're trying to do a comedy and nobody comments, so there's a script, there are the actors, there are all this, but what happens as a performance, if you're in a theater that's much more interactive, then the audience plays a part. You see, whereas if you look at Picasso's great work, the Guernica, you don't affect it by the way you look at it. It's there. But a play, his Oedipus play could be spoiled by an audience not understanding that this is tragic, or one of the comedies could be, etc. So, why a theater? Just for you to know, when you start building theaters, because the person who built this place thought he was building a theater, didn't take our advice that this is not a theater, it's an auditorium. Didn't even have the lights. Lights? Oh, look, there are the lights there. So we had to add the lighting here. And I don't blame the person, because this is rather, it's still not that obvious to many people. A theater has to be, it has to be something that will help to have this kind of interaction. So everybody was sitting around the actors, and it's you have a much people in the back are probably on their mobile or asleep or something here because they're so far away. Oh, hello out there, so whereas here you could you hear very well, you see very well, you can all respond as what's happening. This is the sort of place that this play was taking place in. Okay, in modern examples of this, and we did twice. We used things like this, for the chorus. So the chorus is not just the words you read there, but it's meant to be brought to life. And when you bring it to life, you start to understand more what the tragic vision is that Sophocles is presenting. This is this is for the cosmos. So the 3 things now I want to talk about are the Homer's cosmos. So you're an Athenian citizen. There are 3 very important things in your life. Whatever is your whatever else, however you understand it, but these are the basis for anything you think. The Homeric cosmos, the way Homer presented the world as the cosmos with everything in it. Homer and Hesiod created the genealogy of the gods by providing the gods with epithets, assigning them their functions and honors, clarifying their shapes. Already a rational step forward from the world of Gilgamesh, where the gods are there and they have names and all that, but there's no order, right? Homer gives order, and order is basic for science. It's basic for all sorts of things. And the Homeric cosmos was the pattern for Aristotle's view of science in his day, given the instruments he had. And it stayed there until the modern period, when with instruments we could see the world, the universe was not the way that this was being presented. But the reason that it was given and the actual effect it had on people there is that if you're living in the Gilgamesh world, you come out with thinking, there's no rhyme or reason here. There's no, it's all insecurity, whimsical. You never know what they're going to do to you. All right. So what should you do? You should be like Gilgamesh, because you're the Prometheus. You're the one who's going to, although this is not that culture, but you're that symbol. You're the one who's going to do things for humanity. Okay. Now in the Greek world, we get Prometheus, and Prometheus is the symbol of him. Not one of the big powers in this mafia universe, if you like, if you want to use that word, but rather somebody who is going to bring fire to humanity. Can you imagine humanity without fire? All right, for whatever reasons they had, always ambiguous, you never quite know what it is in Homer's understanding of the cosmos. But basically, they didn't want to give, the mythology that had come through, they didn't want to give fire to humanity, and I'm sure they had their wonderful reasons. So one night on Mount Olympus, this is the country club of the gods, when they were all drunk or enjoying themselves, Prometheus sneaks into Mount Olympus and brings fire and gives it to mankind. So who is the one who's benefited mankind? Gilgamesh, not the gods. Who's the one who's benefited mankind? Odysseus, not necessarily the gods. Homer, if you read the full Odyssey, at one point he says, Zeus gives more evil than good. So please don't monotheize or rationalize these gods. They are. This is one picture of how understanding the universe. Later you get absurdity, and absurdity is what comes out of this kind of a view of the world. That there's no rhyme or reason really. Finally, so it's closer to Gilgamesh. But you have to go on doing something. To bring some kind of meaning out of all this apparent absurdity. So basically, we've moved now from the chaotic world to an orderly world. And this is going to affect everybody after Homer. This is how Homer affects the rationalists and the tragedians and the legal people and everybody. Your basic step, you first want to know what kind of a world you're living in, at its utmost. God, gods, the divine, nature itself. Okay, here's really basically nature itself. The world itself is what's affecting you. Now understand the world, well, it's got many powers in it. Each one has a limit. Oh, there's a limitation then. No one can just do whatever they like or break an agreement or something. There's much more order now in the way the gods behave through Homer. But it's still, ambiguous. You still don't quite know what's happening, until it happens. All right? And that's what we're going to see in Oedipus. Oedipus is being presented as the model for the rationalists because they're arguing with each other, the rationalists and the tragedians at the same time, in the same culture, in the same world in Athens. And some great thinkers come to the conclusion, the world is tragic, not like these people trying to convince us. It's rationalistic. If you tell people it's rationalistic, you'll get rewarded for when you do something. You'll get punished for what you're doing something. You're not preparing them for life. Life doesn't work that way. But shouldn't they live for that? Yes, they should, just to give themselves self-respect. They should live for the truth they have. They should live for the justice as they understand it. They should live to serve humanity, the polis. That's the second main thing there. The gods, they're no source of real stability. There is now more of a stability. That there's an order to things and they have, definitions. But for you as a human, you still, like in the world of Gilgamesh, it's still a world that's very ambiguous. Nobody can know the truth except for, a special person who's like a fortune teller or a psychic or something like, or an astrologer, has some ways of knowing something about things more than what you know, if you believe them. Yeah? But basically, this is what they're, what the world they lived in was. They thought that the best you can get is what mind can give you. The best you can understand is what is being presented to your mind through Homer and Sophocles and what's now going to be presented through Thucydides and Socrates and Plato. The focus is on the mind. So in a sense, Odysseus is a focus right from the beginning of what Homer's actually doing. He's rationalizing a chaotic universe, as far as he thinks he can go. He's not going farther. He doesn't want to give a fairy story. But he says, there's more order than you might think if you've been living in some other culture or something. But the order is still limited, ambiguity. You never quite know. So when we come to Oedipus, you see, in Oedipus you get the tragic hero sort of perhaps in the best possible way that you can present it to someone who isn't going to be reading everything in tragedy and trying to see, what really is there and how does Aristotle really apply and where is he limited. If you just want to sort of understand as a lay person coming into this material about what the tragic is, this is the heart of it all. Oedipus is being presented as a great mind, so tragedy is not irrational. He's the greatest of minds. He's a very moral and wonderful person, a democratic ruler. At one point, the chorus comes and asks him to do something that he's convinced with his mind is going to cause his own death. And he democratically responds, well, if this is what you want, I'll do it, but I know it's going to cost me my life. When he thinks that Creon and Tiresias, they're the ones who killed the king, and because Oedipus came in, and at that moment, they elected him king, and he becomes the king. And then when he starts to Okay, see, now I have to get into the story. I'm sorry I'm doing all this way, but I hope you'll get main points. In the story of Oedipus, this is the ancient legend, this great man who was fated to kill his father and marry his mother. What Sophocles is doing is now interpreting that in his own rational, tragic way. Rational because he's using his mind all the time. He's appealing to you, use your mind, but understand the symbolism, understand the meaning. He's saying, look at this guy. This is the reason at its top, morality at its best, following, doing everything for the polis, sacrificing himself for the polis, all right? But he's sacrificing himself in the full sense of the word, because in seeking the truth, in seeking to do his job in the best way, in seeking to bring truth and a good democratic rule and a good, being a good ruler, and they all say this about him. So Sophocles is speaking through what they all say about him. Don't read some theory of tragedy and come back and read this story. See what Sophocles, the text itself, you have to be empirical. As an actor, I was taught that I could not act a part if I didn't do an empirical study of the particular character. You don't just play the character, as a stereotype. Well, don't read plays that just from the perspective of some wonderful theory that comes later. They're telling you about themselves, what they like to see in this. If you want to see what the author himself is saying, then read the text. Do it as a play. You'll start to see the words, you'll see the action. And I think that this is one way that I'm offering you to think about. I give you the full interpretation. You can read it later. But basically, Sophocles is presenting Oedipus as the model thinker, the model rational man, the model man who's trying to do his best for the polis, for the democracy, for everything that. Okay? So what does he do? He hears this prophecy at a drunken party on a Friday night, I suppose, something like that. Somebody tells him, you think you're something, you're going to kill your father and marry your mother. Now, he had never heard that before. Others seem to have picked that up. I'm going to kill my father, marry my mother? Where does he go? He goes to the best sources. Washington, Moscow, Iran, Saudi Arabia, wherever you think you're going to get something. He goes to Apollo, all right? Apollo represented at that time the oracle at Delphi. Everybody in the whole Middle East, when they wanted some truth about, Reagan had his astrologer when he was in Washington, D.C. Every day he'd do what his astrologer was telling him to do. But, this was the sort of, they'd all go to Apollo, where one of their priestesses would go into a trance, and supposedly Apollo would speak through her, and you would get the prophecies, okay? The oracle at Delphi. And you get things like this, the sun will rise in the east tomorrow, Oedipus will kill his father and marry his mother. Socrates is the wisest man in Athens. Keep that in mind when you read Plato and Socrates, okay? CVSP is the most enjoyable and beneficial program in the cosmos. This is a multiple choice question. Which ones here do you think are the true ones that were given? Number 1 and number 4, right? No. Well, 2 and 3... Forgive me, but these are two prophecies that come out of this place. Okay, so Oedipus will kill his father, marry his mother. What does he do as a rational, moral human being? I'm not going to sit around waiting for the day when, I'm playing with a gun and I shoot my daddy, or, when I get really hot and excited and I get into bed with my mommy. I'm not going to wait around for that. I'm going to use my mind. What does your mind tell you to do for him at the point? You see, the point is, Sophocles is trying to tell you, no matter how well you think you use your mind, it's always limited. So he runs away from home. Running away from home, what does he do? Number 1, he's exiling himself, which is a horrible sacrifice, a horrible price to pay, so that he doesn't kill his father and marry his mother. Don't forget that. Exile is a horrible price to pay, worse than death. Away from your polis, the only place you can be fully human. He exiles himself. As he goes running away, what does he do? He meets the Sphinx. Now, there are many different forms of the Sphinx, but it's not Abul Hol of Egypt. It's more of a bird animal, a bird human, part human, part bird. But this is just one of the famous depictions. It isn't, Gustave Moreau, etc. But this now gives you the symbol here, not the content, a test for your mind. Okay, and nobody in Thebes could answer this test. Okay, what walks on 4 feet at dawn, 2 at noon, and 3 at dusk? Of course, when the Sphinx said this, she said, handsome. Why? Because what she was doing, she was stopping every handsome man from coming in or out of Thebes without passing this test. And none of them had taken CVSP seriously, so they couldn't answer the question. And so what does she do? She mates with them. She has sex with them. You know, handsome guy, okay? And then she kills them. Have you heard of a praying mantis? But okay. But anyway, this is the imagery that they're all getting there. Now, this is a plague on all of Thebes. Okay, first plague number 1. Who answers the plague? When he meets Oedipus, what do you think he said? The human being, man. In the morning, walking, bidabdib in Russian, if you know Russian, all right? When you crawl around as a child, on all 4, all right? And then 2 at noon, when you're a man like myself. And then 3, when you become decrepit old people like yourselves. All right? So, this is the human, the stages of humanity. Okay, so he answers, the human, you see. But the irony of the tragedy is he knows the answer analytically, philosophically, mathematically, astrophysically, biologically. He knows the answer. He's very smart, But he doesn't know anything existential. He doesn't know about truth. That's the truth of life. What is a human being? And what he discovers through the story is a human being is limited by their reason. But they have reason. And that's the great power that they can use to give themselves self-respect, to help the polis, which represents humanity, do something for humanity, and be remembered as a name. But extrinsic reward, what does he do? By doing everything properly, using his mind, investigating in the best possible way, calling in eyewitnesses and doing the good, rational thing. What happens to him? He finds out, but even when he senses it's going to be, he's the one who killed his father and married his mother, not knowing at all. Why? Because on his way to Thebes, Range Rover, motorcycles, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so they attack him, And the guy who attacks him mainly, he kills him. He doesn't know this is either the king of Thebes or his father. He's self-defense. He kills him, all right? So, one person survives because you have to tell the story. You see, it's a drama. And this is the shepherd who comes in at the end and finally discloses the truth. And then we find out that Oedipus has killed the king. Oedipus has killed his father, not knowing, you see, totally innocent. He comes into Thebes, now, having saved them from this plague. It's a democracy. They elect him king. You have Creon and you have Tiresias. They represent the religious authority and the political authority, all right? He rules for a number of years, and then a second plague comes upon Thebes. That's where the story begins now. A second plague, and the people come to him. The people, you see, and they beg him, please, you saved us from the first plague, save us from this plague. And this plague is destroying humanity, bringing humanity to a standstill, all life to a standstill. Horrible thing. Well, what's the source of this plague? Okay, he sends to Apollo. He goes to Apollo. First time he went to Apollo, Apollo tells him, I see a horrible future for you. I see a horrible future for you. You are going to, you're going to kill your father and mate with your mother. It's a horrible thing. All right? That's all he gives him, the data. He does not help him in any way by letting him know, Habibi, your parents are here, not over there. His true parents are in Thebes. They tried to get rid of him because they heard the prophecy and they didn't want to have somebody around who's going to kill them and sleep with them. So they tried to get rid of the baby by giving it to the first shepherd in the story, the Corinthians. The Corinthian shepherd has a heart. He doesn't want to go and expose this baby just so he gives it to his friend, the Theban shepherd. The Theban shepherd, this is a wonderful opportunity. The Corinthian shepherd, wonderful opportunity. King and queen of Corinth are not having children. They'll be so happy to adopt this baby. So the baby Oedipus, gets adopted in Corinth. And nobody ever tells him anything about who he is. He thinks he is the son of these two people, all right? As soon as he hears something that could be horrible, his own mind responds. Gilgamesh responds. Everybody has to die. This horrible thing for everybody, my mind is going to find something better. And why my mind? Because there is a fact. Utnapishtim. I'm going to find out how he did it. All right, but the ending is tragic. In doing it, he's a somebody. In doing it, he's helping the community. He's bringing back wonderful things. But that's the price of truth and knowledge and progress in humanity is heroism. Now, if the hero is not going to be rewarded in heaven by a god or in a rationalistic world, Socrates thinks that, rationally speaking, you should think that if you've been giving a good life, you will have a happy afterlife. And why should you believe everybody goes to Hades or everybody goes to something like that, the popular belief? So Oedipus then is in this line of that his main concern now, he's a ruler. and he's seeking truth, and he's doing it in the best possible way. He investigates. He goes to Apollo, all right? And again, Creon comes back and says, a king was murdered and you haven't avenged it. You know, the automatic balancing system of the cosmos, all right? Something ugly has happened. It has to be nemesis. It has to be, retribution. It hasn't been retributed yet, all right? Nobody has found why. It's Creon, you see, rational thinking. Oh, well, the Sphinx got blah, blah, blah. I slept too late last night. I'm sorry, I didn't read my book. I can't take the exam. He gives me what he thinks as a person who's worried about humanity. How could Creon have left something like that unattended to? So that's number one. Then he calls in the prophet, okay? The divine source, the prophetic source, Tiresias. What does Tiresias say? I know, but I won't tell you because I'm going to cause pain. All right, pain. Who gives a damn about pain? Read carefully the lines and try to sort of dramatize them. In the meeting with the prophet, he's the hero. The prophet is the nobody, only worried about his own pain and saving his own neck. It's Oedipus who continues to seek the truth, no matter what the price is, that brings enlightenment to the audience. Life is tragic, but if you don't do what Oedipus was doing, nothing good can happen for the polis. So the two sides of a tragic philosophy, but the focus is on the greatness, the possible greatness of the human being. That's why at the very end I have that picture of Prometheus. The tragic vision is one of human grandeur and human dignity, all right? It's best appreciated in an atheistic philosophy of life, but all the others appreciate the basic truths that are being given there. Even if they don't come to a tragic conclusion about life, but the meat of it all is that you've got to be a somebody and not a nobody if anything's going to happen for humanity. Don't wait for something from the outside. Here, the outside is negative, all right? Even if in monotheism God is good and all that, doesn't mean you can just sort of get a ticket to heaven, by keeping track of the laws and making sure you're having a good balance or something like the Pharisaic attitude in monotheism. All right, it's about you being a somebody, whatever world you're in, and not a nobody, because that's finally your contribution, your freedom in whatever determinism is surely there, because there's so many things determining you. But within this determinism, you can challenge it. You can do something which will help mankind. I'm sorry I didn't have time to go through it carefully, but I'm trying to just give you a presentation that gets you into the thing. Your teachers can do whatever they like with it.